force the curfew and retake control of the streets. Now, we can talk about the peaceful demonstration that is underway right now as the protesters are marching from U.S. Bank Stadium in the direction of the Capitol in St. Paul. You hear them chanting things like "No justice, no peace," "Say his name," and repeating the name of the victim in this case, George Floyd. And really paying attention to what was the cause of all of this, as we have seen, particularly with the demonstrations that have demonstrated from the 3rd Precinct and the 5th Precinct, it all becomes about the violence and the looting. That is where we saw police take a very different posture last night after allowing the demonstrators to do things like take the ground of the 3rd Precinct. After we saw them flaunt the curfew order for one night, we saw a number of different law enforcement agencies last night, sheriff's deputies, DPS officers, state patrol troopers, city police, come out with the riot gear at the ready, with the tear gas, with the non-lethal weaponry, and they made some 155 arrests in a matter of minutes, really. Well, it stretched out over hours as the demonstrators scattered all about the town. The charges range from disobeying the curfew to vandalism and arson. Now we know that more guardsmen will be out on the street. What we saw the guardsmen doing last night, they had some specific missions in terms of securing certain perimeters and providing protection to the fire crews that were out on the street. And we saw them, their numbers outnumbering the fire crews as they go out. You should note that the guardsmen are armed, and they are not armed with the non-lethal weaponry that you see the police with the riot gear on. So we have a peaceful protest that is underway. Meantime, another curfew is bearing down in a matter of hours. The big question is, how are the demonstrators going to respond? And you see the peaceful demonstrators who are now marching from the stadium toward the Capitol. You have to assume that they're going to respect the curfew order. There are a number of people who you see show up as they showed up in the areas of the 3rd Precinct and the 5th Precinct, and they seem pretty determined to defy any orders they are given. And we'll see how law enforcement responds. And we know that certainly the numbers of the National Guardsmen have been supplemented. Sandra and Ed?
You know, Mike, we're trying to pick up the words of the demonstrators as they walk through the streets there in Minneapolis. Justice now, we have heard. Let's listen. So, Mike, this is continuing on the streets of Minneapolis. Hours before what could be another night of unrest in that city. As you were talking just a moment ago about the preparations that you're seeing being made on the part of police, the National Guard, on how that might look different tonight, knowing the extent to which some of the violent demonstrations continued last night.
Well, how it looked different last night is there were a couple of small fires burning. We certainly didn't see buildings engulfed in flames anymore because the people who wanted to start those fires just didn't have the time to set up and start a fire. What we saw were platoons, if you will. Well, first you saw a large mass of law enforcement, and then as the people who wanted to riot scattered around the city, you saw the law enforcement break up into smaller groups and chase them down and zip strip them. You saw buses filled with detainees rolling back toward the jail where they would be processed. We got that number of 155 people who were arrested, and we're told we can expect that number to rise simply because it takes a long time to process them. But this is also deadly serious, as we got from both the state patrol troopers and the city police. A number of weapons were taken off the street last night, including an AR-15. So there are people who are showing up here with at least violent preparations. So it's very serious out here, and you know that tonight, for a second night, the law enforcement in the community realized that backing off and not taking a heavy hand toward those who want to break windows and destroy the town, that wasn't working. So they took a different posture. Sandra?
Days after the death of George Floyd, protests, some peaceful, some violent, continue in U.S. cities across the nation. We're covering it. Mike Tobin on the ground there in Minneapolis. Thank you.